Well, first up to the West Asian sector, conflicts all around. We were earlier talking about Israel-Gaza war. Well, it's a multi-pronged war now, and all focus has now shifted to northern border of Israel and with southern Lebanon. And it seems tensions are showing no signs of easing between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon. Israeli Foreign Minister Israel Katz firmly rejected calls for a ceasefire in the north today, dismissing a 21-day halt proposed by the United States and France. He made it clear there would be no truce and that Israel would continue its military campaign against the Hezbollah with all its strength, quote unquote, until victory and the safe return of residents to the north is achieved. This comes after Lebanese Prime Minister Najib Mikati expressed hope for a peaceful resolution following intense discussions at the United Nations. However, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, still on his way to address the United Nations, hasn't responded to the ceasefire proposal, and hardliners in his government want the fight to continue. Meanwhile, violence rages on. Overnight, Israeli strikes and airstrikes have pounded and targeted around 75 Hezbollah sites in the Bekaa Valley and southern Lebanon. Tragically, in one strike, at least 23 Syrians, mostly women and children, were killed in the town of Younine. Israel continues to target Hezbollah infrastructure, while 45 projectiles were fired from Lebanon into Israel, with many being intercepted by Israeli defenses. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has reiterated his own promise to ensure Israelis evacuated from the north can safely return home. Though, with the situation escalating, that promise seems far from being realized. Lebanese Prime Minister Mikati is welcoming the ceasefire proposal, but warns its success depends on Israel's willingness to comply on the first hand. Only time will tell if peace talks can get off the ground amid the ongoing violence. Well, but at the same time, it's important to understand what has led to the situation at this point in time. The 1982 Lebanese war, many are suggesting that was the birth of the Hezbollah. It's also called the second Israeli invasion of Lebanon. It began on the 6th of June in 1982 when Israel invaded southern Lebanon. Attacks, counterattacks from both these sides, essentially between the Palestinian Liberation Organization and the Israeli military. And the war caused civilian casualties on both sides of the border. And this all happened after an assassination attempt on Israel's ambassador to the United Kingdom, after which Israel began its Operation Peace for Galilee. And this was an operation that was aimed at specifically PLO's expulsion from Lebanon. PLO refused to surrender. Israel surrounded Beirut. That's what essentially panned out. And in the September of 1982, approximately 14,000 PLO fighters, they've ended up finally leaving Beirut. Israel withdrew its troops in 1984, 2 years later, but left a token force to help out the southern Lebanese army. The war left a legacy of violence, instability in the region. And if that wasn't all, in 2006, things took an awry turn. It was the 2006 Lebanon war. It was a 34-day war between Israel and the Hezbollah. It began on the 12th of July, ended on the 14th of August in 2006. About 1,191 people died and 4,400 people were injured within Lebanon. 9 lakh people were displaced from their homes inside Lebanon. 1/3 of the casualties were children under the age of 13, and 160 Israelis that were killed, including 43 civilians. 900 plus Israelis got injured in the war. This data has been corroborated by the Red Cross as well. But even as we're talking about all of this, a truce or no truce, Israel's military chief told troops on Wednesday that the airstrikes in Lebanon are going to continue, and they're going to continue in order to destroy Hezbollah infrastructure and to prepare the way for a possible ground operation by the Israeli forces. Here's the report. Take a look.
A Reuters camera captured the moment an Israeli airstrike hit a target in the coastal Lebanese city of Tyre on Wednesday. Israel has widened its airstrikes in Lebanon against Iranian-backed Hezbollah militants. In a video released by the Israeli military, the country's army chief told troops the strikes were meant to prepare for a possible ground operation. Even as he spoke, high-level diplomats pushed to stop the fighting in both Gaza and Lebanon. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken.
With regard to Lebanon, we've been working tirelessly with partners to avoid a full-blown war and to move to a diplomatic process that would allow Israelis and Lebanese alike to go back to their homes.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer called on the UN Security Council to pull the sides back from the brink of war.
We need an immediate ceasefire between Israel and Lebanese Hezbollah and the implementation of a political plan which allows Israeli and Lebanese civilians to return to their homes to live in peace and security.
Israeli airstrikes have targeted Hezbollah leaders and hit hundreds of sites deep inside Lebanon. Lebanese hospitals have filled with the wounded since Monday. Lebanon's health minister said at least 51 people were killed and at least 223 wounded in Wednesday's strikes. Hezbollah rocket fire since October has forced hundreds of thousands of Israelis to flee the border region. Israeli authorities said northern Israel was hit by heavy Hezbollah barrages on Wednesday morning. 3 Israeli sources said the United States and France were working on ceasefire proposals to resolve the escalating fighting in Lebanon, but that so far no significant progress had been made.
Well, diplomacy is taking shape, a possible ground incursion that is likely and is on the cards. Meanwhile, some personal stories coming out of Lebanon. Ferial Mehsen narrowly escaped an Israeli strike when she went back to grab her belongings. Now, she finds herself back in the same shelter that she took refuge in during the 2006 Lebanese war that we just spoke about. She is one of the tens of thousands of people driven from their villages in southern Lebanon as Israel stepped up airstrikes this week.
Ferial Mehsen evacuated her family from the village of Sadiqin in southern Lebanon. She went back to fetch their belongings and help her neighbours leave. I don't scare easily, she says. Then an Israeli airstrike hit close by. In a school-turned shelter in Beirut, she scrolls through messages from loved ones who feared the worst. "Are you still alive? I heard you were dead," this one says. Israel's bombardment of southern villages, striking what it says are sites linked to the Iran-backed group Hezbollah, has driven tens of thousands of Lebanese like Mehsen from their homes. The 2-hour drive to Beirut took the whole day when they joined the throng clogging the highways. And they ended up in the same shelter that Mehsen used during the last major conflict between Israel and Hezbollah in July 2006.
I witnessed the July war. We were definitely scared, but not like these days. We suffered and were displaced onto the streets. And we also faced that in 2006, but now the situation is much harder.
Suad Madeh was registering her name at the same shelter after fleeing the southern village of Qusayba. Reaching Beirut did not bring a sense of peace. Even in Beirut, there is an atmosphere of war. Of course we're in a war, she says. The residents of both women's villages had got used to sporadic bombardment nearby over months of cross-border fire triggered by the war in Gaza. But they were unprepared for a sudden escalation on Monday, Lebanon's deadliest single day since its civil war ended in 1990.
The first thing I thought of was to take some clothes so I could change if we got somewhere. Just the basics, and of course, the medicines I take. Nothing more than that. No one cares anymore about little things like the house, because fear takes over. You just want to get out alive.
Where is it? It's over our head.
That's the sound of rockets being intercepted over northern Israel, where Oren Kakun is sheltering in a hotel, as he has since last October 7th. When he fled the town of Shlomi, fearing Hezbollah fighters might cross the nearby Lebanese border and attack Israel like Hamas did that day, killing 1,200 people, according to Israeli tallies. He's one of tens of thousands who've left homes in northern Israel in recent months, and he sees hope in the latest escalation.
I think we see a little bit light, that we attack seriously Hezbollah, that we show them that we want to go back home. And this is what we see now, that the strength of the IDF, that wasn't there in the 7th of October. And all of us are hopefully that it will be until we get safe again.
As the fighting has slowed in the ruins of Gaza, Israel's military focus has shifted to the north. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been under growing political pressure to bring the evacuated residents back to their homes.